Tanner Hayes didn't expect the woman across the hall to answer the door, especially not looking like she hadn't stood in days. She leaned weakly against the frame, her eyes glassy and cheeks pale. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Tanner held out the steaming Tupperware container. "You don't look like you've eaten since last Monday. I made chicken soup. It's nothing fancy, but it helps." She blinked at him, confused. "Why would you bring me food?" He shrugged, shifting the container in his hands. "You've been coughing through the walls for 3 nights. My daughter noticed. She asked if we could help." He smiled faintly. "She's 6. Bossy as hell." A soft laugh escaped the woman's lips. "You brought me soup because your daughter told you to?" "Pretty much." She hesitated, then stepped back. "Come in." The apartment was dark, but not messy. Sparse. Barely lived in. A single suitcase sat by the wall. No photos. No plants. Just a laptop on the counter and a cashmere throw blanket on the couch. He noticed her trembling before she could hide it. "You okay?" he asked, setting the soup on the small glass table. "Just the flu, I think." She lowered herself onto the couch with a wince. "I'm usually good at hiding it. You're not hiding anything from apartment 3B. Our walls are made of paper towels." That earned another laugh. "I'm Noelle Jensen." "Tanner." "Tanner Hayes." He stuck out a hand. She shook it a light, dainty grip. Definitely not someone used to physical labor. "You new here? Moved in last week. You picked a hell of a building. Plumbing sings opera and the heat only works when the moon's full. I needed something quiet." Irony just punched all of us in the face. Her lips twitched, but she looked exhausted. "I should go," he said, nodding at the door. "You need rest. Let me know if you need anything else. My daughter, Ava, is the type to insist we check back in tomorrow." He turned, but her voice stopped him. "Thank you, Tanner." He looked back. She was holding the soup in her lap like it was gold. "Anytime," he said. The next 3 days followed a strange rhythm. He'd knock. She'd open the door looking slightly better. He'd bring something: tea, bread, another container of soup. Once, a children's drawing of her with a giant thermometer in her mouth, signed from Ava, age 6, almost 7. Noelle started smiling more. Her hair was always pulled into a loose bun, her voice still raspy, but her eyes big, gray, and surprisingly sharp held more warmth each day. On the 4th morning, she opened the door before he knocked. "You're early," she said, grinning. "I didn't bring food today." "Oh no, what will I do?" she teased, then stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated. "I don't want to bother you." "You're not." She walked to the kitchen, her step slow but steady. "Tea." He followed. "You're the one who's sick." "Not anymore, really. Just tired." She looked over at him. "I'm not used to people checking in on me." "You've got someone now." She paused. "Is it just you and Ava?" He nodded. "Yeah. Her mom left when she was 3. Said she wasn't made for this kind of life. I work construction. Paycheck to paycheck. It's not glamorous." Noelle was quiet. Then, softly, "Sounds like she wasn't made for real love." He glanced at her. She was leaning against the counter, expression unreadable. "I guess," he said, clearing his throat. "We get by. Ava's everything to me. I work mornings while she's at school, and I take night shifts when I can get them. We make it work." Noelle stirred her tea slowly. "You seem like a good dad." "I try. I want her to grow up knowing she's wanted. That she matters." She nodded, then looked down at her mug. He didn't miss the flicker of something behind her eyes. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. "Just tired." But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. By the next weekend, she was sitting on his couch. Ava had invited her over for princess pancakes and movie day. Noelle arrived with a small bag of fresh strawberries and a scarf wrapped around her neck. Tanner made pancakes while Noelle sat beside Ava, listening intently as the little girl rambled about school, her favorite cartoons, and how many marshmallows were acceptable in hot chocolate, at least 10. Noelle laughed easily, asked questions, and looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. That night, after Ava went to bed, Tanner walked Noelle to her door. She turned to him, lingering in the hallway. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For letting me in." He hesitated. "You're easy to care about." Her eyes met his. "So are you." The silence stretched between them. And then, without thinking, he leaned in just enough to touch his forehead to hers. She didn't pull away. Her hand brushed his chest. "Good night, Tanner." "Night, Noelle." He walked back to his apartment, heart pounding. He didn't know who she really was. And she had no idea how deep he was already falling. The first time Noelle left the apartment building, Tanner noticed. She stepped out into the early spring drizzle wearing a long beige trench coat, her posture straighter than before, her face sharper, more focused. Not like someone recovering from an illness, but like someone remembering who they used to be. She didn't see him across the street, crouched next to his truck with a socket wrench in hand, trying to fix the front axle before work. She walked with purpose, turned the corner, and disappeared into a waiting black town car. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans. The car was too polished for this neighborhood, the driver too stiff-backed. Something about it didn't sit right. For the first time since she'd moved in, she felt out of place here. That night, she didn't answer when he knocked. The next afternoon, she came back carrying a white pastry box from a bakery he'd only seen in magazines. She looked at him as she passed in the hallway and smiled like nothing had changed. "I got you something," she said, holding out the box. He opened it to find 2 perfect slices of flourless chocolate cake. The kind that cost more than his grocery bill. "I thought you weren't feeling up to going out yet," he said. "I had a few things to take care of." "Out of town?" She hesitated. "Just the east side." He nodded slowly. "That's a long way for cake." "It's good cake." He didn't push. But something had shifted. Later, as they sat on her couch eating in silence, he asked, "How long are you planning to stay here?" She looked up, startled. "Why? You brought a single suitcase. No pictures. No books. And you've got a driver waiting for you around the corner." Her fork paused midair. "You saw the car?" "I fix trucks for a living. I noticed details." She set down the plate. "I didn't lie. You didn't tell the truth, either. Noelle isn't my real name." He stared at her. "I needed to disappear for a while. Away from cameras, from headlines, from people who only cared about what I could give them." She took a breath. "My name is Isadora Langston." The name hit him like a brick to the chest. A name he'd seen on the news, on the side of buildings, etched into the bottom of luxury perfume ads. He leaned back. "The Langston Group?" "Yes." "The hotel empire?" "Yes." He stood slowly, running a hand through his hair. "And you've been living across the hall from me, eating my soup, playing games with my kid, while the rest of the city thinks you're in Monaco or Dubai or wherever people like you vanish to?" "I didn't plan any of it," she said, standing too. "I just wanted quiet. I rented the apartment under a friend's name. I barely brought anything. I thought I'd be here for 1 week, maybe 2. Then I got sick. Then you knocked. And you just let me think you were some girl who moved in with nothing and no one?" "I didn't lie about that part. I do have no one." "Not really." He crossed his arms, tension running through his shoulders. "Why me? What do you mean? Why keep coming over? Why answer the door? Why let me in when you could have hired a private doctor and a live-in chef?" Her voice softened. "Because you didn't want anything from me. You didn't know who I was. You weren't trying to get something. You brought soup because your daughter told you to, and you stayed because you're kind." He didn't say anything for a long moment. "Then, you should have told me." "I know. I don't know how to look at you now." She stepped forward. "I'm still the same person who watched cartoons with Ava and sat in your kitchen while you made pancakes. You're also someone who owns 10 hotels and probably has a team of lawyers who could erase this entire building if you sneezed wrong. You think that's who I really am?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "I thought I did. But now I'm not sure." She didn't reach for him. She just stood there and let the silence stretch. Finally, he said, "I need to think." She nodded. "I'll be here." He left without another word. That night, he didn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every second of the past few weeks. The way she laughed when Ava told a joke. The way her hands shook when she sipped tea that first day. The softness in her voice when she asked about his life. And now, all of it felt like a story he'd read in the wrong order. The next morning, Ava asked, "Is Noelle coming over today?" He didn't know how to answer. But by the time the sun set, he found himself standing outside her door, heart pounding. When she opened it, she didn't look surprised. "I still don't know what this is," he said. "But I know you weren't faking that smile when you sat with my daughter. I know you didn't need anything from me, but you stayed anyway." "I didn't want to leave," she said. "Then don't." She stepped aside, and he walked in. This time, he was the one who needed answers, and he was ready to hear them. Tanner stood at the window in her apartment, hands in his pockets, watching the rain slick the street below. Soft jazz hummed from a speaker on the counter low, unobtrusive, the kind of music that filled silence without trying to replace it. Behind him, Isadora moved quietly, folding a blanket she'd kept on the couch. She didn't try to fill the space between them with words. He noticed that about her now, she only spoke when it mattered. She didn't perform, didn't pretend. That, more than anything, was what kept him from walking away. He turned around. "How long have you been hiding out like this?" he asked. "Since the board meeting," she answered, placing the folded blanket aside. "My uncle tried to force a merger I didn't approve. I called for a vote. He didn't like that I had more power than he thought." He raised an eyebrow. "So you disappeared?" "I stepped down temporarily. Publicly, it looked like a sabbatical. Privately, it was either leave or fight dirty. You don't strike me as someone who runs." "I don't, but I needed to think. And I needed to know what I wanted outside of all that." He walked over to the kitchen, leaned against the counter. "And did you figure it out?" She leaned beside him, close enough he could smell the faint trace of orange blossom on her skin. "Part of it. I know I don't want to go back to being surrounded by people who only see me as a stepping stone. I know I want to build something different." He tilted his head. "Different how?" She hesitated, then said, "I bought a building in Queens before I left. It's old, needs work, but it could be turned into a non-profit housing project. I've been working on the plans at night." "You're repurposing your own money to help tenants?" "Yes. Quietly. No press. No ribbon cutting. I just want to do something real." He studied her face. "That's why you stayed." She nodded. "That, and I didn't expect a 6-year-old to draw me wearing a tiara and demand I come over for pancakes." He laughed under his breath. "She misses you, by the way." "I miss her too." He paused. "I don't want Ava to get attached unless you're staying." Isadora looked up at him. "I'm not going back to my old life. Not in the way people expect." "And what about us?" he asked carefully. "What does this mean?" "I don't know yet. I only know that I feel more like myself here than I have in years. And that when you look at me, I don't feel like a product." He stepped closer. "You're not. You never were." "I wasn't sure you'd come back," she said quietly. "After I told you everything." "I almost didn't," he admitted. "But then I realized I'd rather live with the truth than lose what we had." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I've never had this before, not like this." He met her eyes. "Me either." The silence between them shifted. Not heavy, not unsure. Solid. Then she said, "I want you and Ava to come with me tomorrow." He frowned. "Where?" "Somewhere I need to go. It's important." He hesitated. "Is it safe?" "Yes. Just trust me." He held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "All right." The next morning, she arrived at his door wearing jeans and a simple navy coat, no makeup, her hair tucked into a knit cap. She looked like any other woman on the block except for the sleek black SUV parked at the curb. Tanner buckled Ava into the back seat while Isadora gave the driver directions. They didn't speak much on the way. Ava dozed off by the second red light, clutching a stuffed rabbit. The car pulled up to a low, weathered building on a quiet street in Queens. The sign out front read, "Langston Community Housing Initiative coming soon." Tanner looked at her. "You already started work." "I wanted to be sure it could be done before I said anything." She led them inside. The building smelled faintly of dust and old wood, but the bones were strong. In the main room, blueprints were spread across a folding table. Sketches of renovated units, communal kitchens, and child care spaces lined the walls. "I wanted to be a place where families like yours can live without worrying about the next rent hike," she said. "Where kids can grow up safe." He looked around slowly. "You could have built another hotel." "I don't care about hotels anymore." He turned to her. "Why show me this?" "Because this is the first thing I've done that didn't come from a boardroom. It came from you. From Ava. From soup and pancakes and late-night cartoons." He stepped forward. "You're serious about this?" She nodded. "I want to build something with meaning, and I want you to be part of it." He looked over at Ava, now wide awake and peering curiously at the blueprints. Then back at Isadora. "You're not what I expected," he said. "I've spent years being what people expected. It's exhausting." He took her hand again, firmer this time. "Then let's build something different. Together." She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath since the day he knocked on her door. And in that half-renovated room filled with dust and promise, something unspoken shifted into place. Not a fantasy. Not a lie. Just the start of something real. The smell of fresh paint lingered faintly in the air as Isadora stepped into the newly renovated space, her boots clicking softly against the polished tile. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting warm shadows across the open common room. It had taken months of permits, negotiations, and endless hours of planning, but the Langston Community Housing building was finally done. She glanced over her shoulder as Tanner walked in with Ava balanced on one hip, her small backpack swinging from his shoulder. His flannel shirt was dusted with flour, and there was a faint smear of something pink on his jaw, probably frosting from the cupcakes Ava had insisted on decorating that morning. "You have icing on your face," Isadora said, reaching up and swiping it gently with her thumb. Tanner grinned. She said we needed exactly 24 cupcakes for the opening. I think she just wanted the excuse to use rainbow sprinkles. Ava wiggled free and darted toward the community playroom, already familiar with the layout after weeks of helping Isadora arrange books and toys. Isadora stepped closer to Tanner, her voice lowered. I wasn't sure this day would come. He looked around the room, taking in the final result: the clean lines, the carefully chosen colors, the signs of life already moving through the halls. You pulled it off. She folded her arms lightly. No, we did. He turned to face her fully. You know, I used to think people with money lived on a different planet. Private schools, hired help, cars that cost more than a house. I thought they'd never understand what it's like to count every dollar and still come up short. Isadora tilted her head. And now, I still think most of them don't. But you do. Her voice softened. I didn't always. I had to lose everything that made me feel untouchable before I saw the truth. And then I met you. Tanner tapped his fingers against his thigh, thoughtful. You didn't just see the problem, you did something about it. That matters. Ava came running back, holding a small piece of paper. They're here, she announced. People are coming in the front now. Isadora crouched, brushing a strand of hair behind Ava's ear. Are you ready to be the official cupcake assistant? Ava nodded solemnly. I already washed my hands. Twice. Tanner chuckled as she ran off again. You know, she asked me last night if you were going to stay forever. Isadora's eyes flicked to his. What did you say? I told her I didn't know. That it wasn't up to me. Actually, she said quietly, it is. Tanner raised a brow. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a slim envelope. I bought the unit across the hall from yours. He blinked. You're moving back in? If you'll have me. He took the envelope, opened it, and found the new lease agreement inside, signed and dated. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to. This place. It gave me something nothing else ever did. A sense of home that wasn't wrapped in glass and steel. I want to be near you. Near her. I want to build something that doesn't require bodyguards or press releases. Just dinners, bedtime stories, and yes, pancakes. Tanner looked down at the contract, then back at her. You're serious. Completely. Her voice didn't waver. I've already transferred the building to a trust. It'll run independently. I'll stay on the board, but not as a figurehead. I want to live the life I almost missed. He tucked the envelope under his arm and reached up to cradle her face. This wasn't supposed to happen, you know. I just wanted to drop off soup to a sick neighbor. And I just wanted to disappear for a while. They both laughed quietly. But then you brought me back to myself, she added, stepping closer. You and that little girl with the loud voice and big heart. Tanner kissed her slow and deliberate, like he was anchoring something he never wanted to lose. She leaned into it, her hands flat against his chest, her pulse steady and sure. When they finally broke apart, he murmured, So, dinner tonight? She tilted her head. Are you cooking? Spaghetti. Ava insists she's helping. Then I'm definitely coming over. As guests began filtering into the building, Isadora and Tanner stood side by side, greeting families, answering questions, and guiding people through the halls. Ava handed out cupcakes with careful precision, occasionally dragging adults by the hand to show off the reading nook she'd personally approved. After the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Isadora leaned her head on Tanner's shoulder as they watched Ava fall asleep on one of the beanbags in the playroom. This isn't the life I imagined, she whispered. He looked down at her. Better or worse? Better, she said. So much better. Later that evening, as they walked back to their building, Ava nestled between them, half asleep and gripping both their hands. Isadora looked up at the quiet sky. She had stepped away from a world of power, privilege, and polish. And in its place, she had found something unshakable. Real. Home wasn't marble floors or penthouse views. It was the man beside her. The child humming softly. The sound of laughter through thin walls. And she wasn't going anywhere. The first flakes of snow drifted past the window as Isadora tied the last silk ribbon around the small box. A single gold charm nestled inside a tiny, hand-carved key pendant that shimmered under the light. Tanner had mentioned once, quietly, that he'd never had a key to anything that felt like it truly belonged to him. She intended to change that. Outside the apartment, laughter echoed faintly down the hallway. It was Ava's voice, high and bright, followed by the deeper rumble of Tanner's. They'd gone down to the corner bodega to grab hot chocolate mix, Ava insisting that store-bought wasn't good enough for their first official snow night. Isadora set the box beside the dinner plates, 3 of them, arranged on the table she'd found at a second-hand shop and spent 2 weekends refinishing. Tanner had helped her sand it down. Ava had painted a secret constellation of stars on the underside. It wasn't expensive, but it was theirs. When the door opened, Ava burst in first, her cheeks pink and her mittens damp, a plastic bag swinging wildly from her wrist. "It's snowing like a snow globe exploded," she announced, dropping the bag on the counter. Tanner followed, brushing snow off his shoulders. His hair was damp, his boots tracking faint prints on the floor. Isadora handed him a towel without a word, and he leaned down to kiss her cheek. "I almost lost her to a mountain of slush on the sidewalk," he said. "I won," Ava declared, climbing onto her stool. "I didn't fall once." Isadora smiled and turned toward the stove. "Dinner's ready. Sit." As they ate roasted chicken, roasted vegetables, and warm, crusty bread, conversation flowed easily. Ava recounted her snowball victory over a group of neighborhood kids in vivid detail, embellishing just enough to make Tanner chuckle under his breath. When Ava yawned mid-sentence, Isadora rose to her feet. "Go grab your pajamas," she said gently. "I'll come tuck you in soon." Ava nodded sleepily and shuffled down the hall without protest. Tanner stood, collecting the plates. "I'll handle the dishes." "No," she said, stopping him with a glance. "Sit." He watched her cross the room and return with the small box. She placed it in front of him carefully. "What's this?" "Something that belongs to you now." He opened it slowly, lifting the gold charm from its velvet cushion. "It's a key." "Not just any key," she said. "It's for the new apartment, the one across the hall." He blinked. "You're giving me a key to your place?" "I'm giving you the key to ours," she said quietly. "I signed the lease over to both our names. This isn't just mine anymore. I want you and Ava there with me. Officially. Permanently." He stared at her, the charm glinting in his palm. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything. I want all of it." The messy mornings, the late-night cocoa runs, the forgotten school projects. "I want us." He stood slowly, walked around the table, and pulled her into his arms without hesitation. "You already had me," he whispered. "But this makes it real." She wrapped her arms around his neck, resting her forehead against his. "I love you, Tanner." He smiled, eyes warm. "You better, because I'm not going anywhere." They kissed, slow and steady, until Ava's sleepy voice called from the hallway. "Are you coming, or are you kissing all night?" Tanner laughed against Isadora's mouth. "Both," he called back. Later, after Ava had been tucked in and the apartment was quiet, they lay together on the couch, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing circles on her back. "I never thought I'd fall in love in a place with creaky floors and flickering lights," she murmured. "And I never thought I'd fall for a woman who once ran a billion-dollar company and still can't figure out how to reset the microwave clock," he teased. She elbowed him gently. "I'm learning." He kissed the top of her head. "You already know everything that matters." Snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the street below. The Langston community building stood tall just a few blocks away, its lights glowing warmly against the night. Families had already begun moving in. The playroom echoed with new laughter, the kitchen filled with the scent of real meals. And in the small, imperfect apartment that started it all, love settled in like it had always belonged there. Months passed, and life found a beautiful rhythm. Ava's drawings covered the fridge. Her shoes lived perpetually in the hallway. Tanner's tool belt hung on a hook beside Isadora's favorite scarf. They hosted neighbors for Sunday dinners, volunteered at the community building, and spent Friday nights watching movies curled up under a shared blanket. One spring afternoon, as they stood in the courtyard of the community housing building during a neighborhood festival, Isadora turned to Tanner, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I forgot what life felt like when it wasn't curated," she said. He slid his arm around her waist. "This is the real thing." And she knew, deep in her bones, that it was. He'd given her a life no boardroom ever could. One filled with chipped mugs and bedtime giggles, flour-dusted countertops, and honest, unconditional love. She'd once been the woman who could have anything. Now, she had everything. And it was perfect.